Guys, Casey Santana. We're back again with another episode to share with you guys. I've got a special guest to share with you guys that I had a pleasure of getting to know him just in the past couple weeks, but know so much of his work in the past couple years. So I am really honored to have him on and just excited that he's going to share some time with us and some information. So welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. It's a great shirt you have on there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It is actually one of my favorite shirts. It's gotten cut it up, but it stays in style. Usually, you know how that goes. 80s baby, 90s kid type of vibe. Can't go wrong with it. Tell me a little bit about where you're from. I think you had said you're a little bit up north from me, but we are both in California. I know I'm enjoying the sunny weather today. I'm actually like tired of the gloom, the first gloom of like half of the day, just because I have a 3 and a 5-year old. So they get completely bored. And I try to wait till the sun comes out, but lately it's been really hot. So tell me a little bit where you are in California.
Well, in California, I'm located in Ventura, and unlike you, I love the gloom. It's like my
Oh,
favorite part of summer, actually. And I'm kind of bummed it's going to be like 10 days of sun and heat because we live so close to the ocean that our house doesn't even have an
mhm.
air conditioner. So when it gets warm, but it's next
Oh,
to never warm enough to need an air conditioner here. So, which is very counter to where I grew up, which was Indiana.
oh,
And that's how I got turned on to cannabis as well. If you want me to go down
oh.
that story.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
had no
so
I had no clue, Indiana. Yeah, but you're by the coast, so I can't, you can't complain. I forget you guys don't have, usually those houses don't have the AC units. But yeah, that's interesting that you enjoy the gloom. But
it's
hey, that's
moist,
a nice area.
it's like a rainforest,
Area.
but cool when it's
True.
that temperature.
True. Yeah, it is pretty dry out here. They call like the Inland Empire the armpit of California, but I think I've gotten used to it since I've lived in here, like here since I was 10. Thank you so much again for coming on. And what we would like to do is maybe like have you say who you are, and then we can dive in to what you've actually built out. So I know you said you're from Indiana. Tell me a little bit about that. Maybe like also tell me what got you into cannabis out there and what cannabis looks like out there, I mean, from your time.
What's wonderful is that little smirk, that little laugh, ha. But when you hear the story, you're gonna go aha, which is a very interesting twist to this whole thing. So, my mother was smoking weed and drying it out in the oven, growing it with her brothers. They lived down near the Kentucky border. You've probably heard of the cornbread mafia type stuff. I'm not saying that they were part of that, but all those old farm boys grew weed, and that my first exposure to actual weed was them drying it in the oven and freaking out that my dad was going to come home and smell it, and she was going to get in trouble for drying weed in the oven at home back in, this is probably 1981 2. um and then, tragic set of events, and move forward all the way. I'll just fast forward to high school, where the I networked in with like an older dude. He was 3 years older than me. He drove a '63 Impala back in 1991, which you can imagine how cool he was, right?
Yeah.
And he was the weed dealer, but I was a super nerd and an athlete. I played football and basketball. So, and my brother, he kind of fell into that trap of drugs and got in a lot of trouble. So I was kind of like, you know what, I'm gonna hold off until I'm 18 to even smoke this stuff. But then I saw the mercantilism side of it, and it was like I was selling Jordans and CDs and
Mm.
all that stuff with the older friend I was telling you about, my mentor. And then he turned me on to weed about the time Dr. Dre's Chronic album dropped.
Oh,
And I was going to go to the super engineering school to be an engineer, but I wanted to take a year off and have fun. So I went to IU Bloomington, and he actually drove me to my dorm the first day. And he's like, look, dude, you got to find us a hookup here. Like, this is it. You're at the Mecca, you know, find us, hookup. Just so funny now to look back, because he was 3 years older than me. It's kind of manipulating me, but at the same time, it was like
Absolutely.
the most smartest thing he could say to me. He's like, "Hey, dude, you're not gonna get in trouble in college. Just get us a hookup. Just get us a hookup. Get us a plug, dog." In today's terminology,
Yeah.
and literally, it's like IU Bloomington was awesome. Um, as you can imagine, stayed in the dorm and met this dude named uh, Rob, and I hope one day he sees this and looks back and knows that I use his real name. But he was getting he would go by like he had a high school buddy there who had a plug, and they were getting all their weed from East Chicago at the time, and Hammond. And he'd get a half pound, I'd buy a quarter pound of it, we'd split it, whatever. And then one Christmas break, he wasn't there. And I was like, oh shit, I can't go home without like a pound or something. Like, this is
Yeah.
crazy, because I would just take weed from there, and do my thing. And so I went to the house of the plug and just, I don't know, who are you? I was like, I'm Rob's buddy. You know how he got a pound last week? That half pound I took. And he was like, can I trust you? I was like, yeah. He's like, here's a pound.
Oops.
Fronted it
Yeah.
to me. Next
Nice.
week, 3 pounds. The following week, 10 pounds. And then it just went. But through him, I got my first Kind bud. And it came in a food saver bag back in 1994. And I didn't even know what a food saver was back then. And it
Oh
was big
yeah.
cola, and it was Hawaiian, and it was grown in the greenhouse on campus. And I was like, whatever, right? Fast forward a year, I was getting like these, they call it black African clones. They look like Tootsie Rolls with orange hairs. Like, I was getting all these clones. They're coming from the greenhouse, come from the greenhouse. And I couldn't believe it, right? I was just like, what? So, I'm move on from IU, I go to Rose-Hulman, which is a prestigious engineering school, to play football and get my head straight, because my dad had busted me, you know, being an activist. And
Yes.
I was trying to get back into his good graces. So I was like, okay, I'll go back and do this stuff. And crazy how serendipitous it was, because I had access to these journal archives. And I'm like, I'll just search and see what kind of cannabis research there is. And lo and behold, IU Bloomington had one of 2 DEA permits to cultivate cannabis. And Sam the Skunk Man Watson, had sent his entire seed accession collection through Dr. John McPartland to IU to be grown out. So they grew out 157 seed accessions to flower, and then, chemically analyzed them. I mean, that includes Super Skunk, Early Girl, Durban Poison, all of his OG shit. And that's where my seed and clone collection started. And it also is how there was a nucleating point around Indiana being a spot for Kind bud, because the whole hippie community there, basically, they're all doing hydro, and they're the ones on Fortran back in the day. I don't know if you remember ASL, age, sex, location,
Yep.
all this chat room stuff. And
Mhm.
so Indiana's actually kind of a central player in this whole thing. And it's just really interesting. So from there, I was growing in the cornfields, every summer. You rip out a big chunk of corn and plant your weeds. And that went on all through undergrad. And then when I went to graduate school, I bought a house and just built me an indoor grow, built a false wall and a 2-car garage, and was banging out indoor for, that 7 years. During that period, in 96, I went to Amsterdam, got a lot of really cool videos of a little punk me
Oh,
going into
nice.
all the coffee shops. And it was crazy, because I brought seed and weed back, Black Domina and NL5 number haze and Super Skunk #1 seeds. And it's funny, we had one taxi driver. He took us, like, after we got the seed and we got some weed, got like 4/8, because we're going back to London and we had to stay there for 3 days, so we want to have some weed. And
Yeah.
they take us to the grocery store so I can get the cellophane and the mustard. I was doing it just like they were sending the bricks up from Mexico, and I stuffed it in my sock.
Must.
It's
Okay,
just
I
so
haven't heard of the mustard part. I must be late to that.
so funny. We even got hit by customs on the way back in the States. And my buddy, the dude I was talking about, the older cat, his name was Ace.
Mhm.
He always wore sunglasses, and they were prescription. Even in high school, he wore mirrored sunglasses, and he was like
Okay.
6'4", about 300 pounds. He looked like a
Oh, how
grown
big
man
is
all the time.
he?
And this is 96, man. And they pull up the Hard Rock Cafe bag, and they're like, "You went to Amsterdam?" And right then the bag kind of tipped and ripped in half.
Of
And he's like,
course.
"You just ripped the only thing I brought from Amsterdam?" And I was just like, "Ooh." And the dude was just like, "All right, cool, go." Like, it was like the perfect,
Nice.
this perfect situation.
Well
And then,
done. Well done, Ace.
hold on, Ace was the man. He's the one
Yeah.
with that 63 Impala. And then,
Okay.
yeah, anyway, I don't want to talk about him. But
Dope.
then in '98, me and some college buddies, we went to Jamaica. Um,
Wow.
Same thing, man. We hooked up a really cool taxi driver, and just like, "Hey, stay with us the whole week. We want to do everything. We want to go find mushrooms, we want caves, we want
Mhm.
every weed grow, you know." And that was when I learned really the best way to cultivate cannabis, hands down. Because
Oh,
they
wow.
took us to
Okay.
like this mountain, like it's not a mountain, but big. It had volcanic pits, like, and they'd fill that with dirt and stick the plants in it. And then there was a plains area, but it was all hot and kind of dry and weird, and really exposed to the sun all day. And the best place that we saw, it was so awesome. It was down in a riverbed, and they had furrowed up the mounds. This is where all the pineapples grew. And
Mm.
basically, when high tide would come in, the river would flood in between the
Oh,
furrows, and then low tide would take it out. It was like an ebb and flow hydroponic table.
yeah.
But those buds were just like, and just oozing resin, and it was very clear. Like the hillside, it was, looked like,
Dry.
you're growing in the Central Valley
Yeah.
versus growing in Ventura, like where everything grows really nicely. And then come, graduate, boom. And about 2003 or four, one of my friends is over, and he's like, if you just move out to California, you could put a piece of paper on the wall and grow weed legally. And I was like, bullshit. Same bullshit I said when the dude was growing the weed at IU on campus, right? I'm like, bullshit. And then about 2 years later, I met who would be my wife, and moved in with her in Ventura. And first time I step out on the back patio, I kind of stretch, and I'm like, whoa, there's big colas above the fence. So I walk around to the other street, and I knock on the dude's door, and I'm like, hey,
Hi, friend.
you're growing weed back there, huh? And
You
he's
bet.
like all paranoid. And I was like, don't worry. I just moved here from Indiana trying to figure this thing out. And he's like, oh, go to this doctor, and they'll write you a note, and you can just put a piece of paper on the wall, and you can grow as much as you want. And I was just like, no shit. So
Yeah.
then during that course, I created quite the seed collection between IU Bloomington. I went to Canada several times, and like I said, Amsterdam and Jamaica. And basically, it was like I just started growing in my garage. Started working with Jeff Raber at the workshop, having him test things. This was probably 2007. Started going to, I think it was like something like MCCW. It was like it was in Pasadena, and it was like this little lady had these like little classes and stuff. And it's like the first time DJ Short ever gave a presentation, came out of the closet ever, was at there. And I was there. I have pictures with him for that. And anyway, that's where I like hooked up with like Michael. Well, I met a dude who knew Michael Backus. And then when I met Michael Backus, I was, cultivating the backyard, working in the garage, breeding, still actively trying to create, we had great purple, a great what we call green class, which is Osamine, which is like a Pinterest Creek or a green crack or
Mhm.
green queen, great OG, killer OG, porn star from Santa Barbara. And then we had our NL5s seeds and the Durban and all those different. We had the 7 key classes, right? Terpenoline, caryophyllene, limonene, myrcene and whatnot. And he was just like, "Whoa, you grew this?" I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "And you're a PhD chemist?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I got an idea." And then we started Napro. And Napro was built on the back of essentially, we went to a group of dispensaries that we knew were testing through multiple laboratories, compliance laboratories. Among them, Steep Hill, Workshop, Halent, all the normal names back then. This is 2011, and these dispensaries were in the up and up. They wanted to have terpene testing offered to their patients because they wanted, more information, more better. It was a very rare situation,
This is
and
still early 2000s still?
this is 2011.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so we're a little bit further out. Okay.
yeah. I've skipped through my PhD work because that was just 80 hours a week of me pipetting and writing papers. And if you want to learn about site selective DNA binding and natural products chemistry, go right ahead. All the while, I was using all that stuff to do
I'd be like,
nefarious things.
we'll put it in the description, fellas.
Yeah. Yeah, just check out the LinkedIn. The papers are just mind-boggling. Because actually, one shout out to our research group, though. The only deemed cure for testicular cancer is bleomycin in conjunction with radiation. It's what they treated. What's his name? The cyclist Armstrong,
Oh, yes.
Lance Armstrong with, and he actually got treated in Indianapolis where I was doing the research, but nobody knew how that worked, and we were the first research group to get a crystal structure of that bleomycin bound to DNA at the cleavage site, which is what inhibits the cancer. So shout out to Dr. Eric Long. But when we're in California starting a laboratory, I realized really quickly, because I'd go interview the laboratories who were testing for terpenes, and I'd ask them simple questions like, what solvent are you using? Oh, we can't tell you, that's proprietary. Well, how are you doing it? We can't tell you that, it's proprietary. Everybody was trying to keep their secrets, that was kind of the thing back then. And essentially, I knew they were keeping their secrets because they're reporting like 10% terpenes and things like that. And I was like, that's impossible. So
Yeah.
we got a lot of money refunded back to the dispensaries who were paying for the testing, because I showed that their testing was flawed by doing parallel testing. And we developed the first validated methodology for the analysis of cannabinoids and terpenes. And we made it publicly available, paid extra to make it so everyone could view it, to give all of the laboratories in the industry a roadmap on how to do the chemistry in a way that would be effective, cost efficient, and repeatable over and over and over again without destroying their equipment. That's probably one of the best things that Matt Giese, co-founder of Napro, suggested. He said, we shouldn't be publishing this in a journal and making people pay for it. We need to make it open access, because it will
Help.
make us be thought leaders in the space, right? Because everyone was doing it wrong. Let's show them how to do it right. And right behind that, we were obviously driving a breeding program, because we started Napro as a quality control side hustle for the dispensaries, but the main focus was solely R&D. And it was driving a breeding program that was based at Molecular Farms in Salinas, where we were, basically creating hybrids, selecting for not only there were like 60 criteria, but mostly like highest THC, highest CBD, highest THCV, CBDV, highest limonene, highest terpenylene, and then, getting into the mix of the terpenes. And then the stores, it was like this weird thing where everybody wanted to visualize it. They wanted to see it. They didn't, like, these tables of data weren't working for people. The dispensaries were complaining that they get a COA from a compliance laboratory and it's just a table with numbers. They don't know how to, what is this? Weed people typically shy away from science or numbers. I'm just kidding. Unless it's the highest THC. Oh, another joke. So we wanted to create a visualization tool, not only to help dispensaries and customers, but breeders. Because if you take something that is a true, how do I put this? if you take something that's purely limonene dominant and you take something that's, has another terpene cassette and you hybridize them, you get like all these different terpene profiles. And we wanted to be able to look at it and see the separation in we call it segregations in genetics. So, like the whole brown eye, blue eye thing, right? If you have two brown eyed people, but they have little a alleles, then you can get blue eyed children, right? It's very similar with cannabis, but the tables don't allow you to see it really quickly, but colors do. And so we started to embark on this way to create a report that would take chemical data and turn it into a useful infographic so that we could use it not only as a tool for, breeding and looking, but also as a tool for owners of dispensaries to be able to understand why their managers were paying a certain price for something, or to drive a purchase decision, and more importantly, to end the name game. Because back then, what was
Yes.
Blue Dream in California was like OG by the time I got to Colorado, and White Runts by the time I got to the East Coast. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? It was like
Yes.
the whole
Thank
name game thing. So what we learned
drives me nuts.
I think it was 15 is when we published the Geesey et al. The methodology. But the year before that, we had shown Ethan Russo and some of the Shulam, these guys, the total breakdown of the California terpene situation. Because a dude named Ryan Lee, also known as Chimera, he's a known breeder. He's Canadian. He's an awesome dude. Shout out to Ryan Lee. He took me all the way, up Spy Rock, all around the triangle, and we just collected all the germplasm we could to be able to grow it all out in the same environment, to do terpene and cannabinoid analysis on it, to create a whole chart of what the state of the cannabis situation was in California at that time. And we published that at ICRS in, I think, 2017, but we'd shown it at the Emerald Cup in 2015 when we introduced the PhytoFacts to the world. So I don't know if you have a PhytoFacts to show, but it's a beautiful infographic that kind of color codes the
I have
dominant.
this,
No, that's
which
not a PhytoFacts.
is
That's the Emerald Cup. That's the
yes,
Emerald Cup.
my little color chart that I go by when I'm judging. But no, I don't have any diagrams or anything with me.
Yeah,
Or we
we
will
check
put
it
it.
out.
Yeah, if you have any links, we'll make sure we add it to the description, and people will be able to view it once they see the description on that. But
Yeah, because the beauty of that is that you can look at there's 3 bars at the top of the report that are the top 3 terpenes or smell molecules in the essential oils. I use terpenes loosely as a colloquialism for all of the constituents of essential oils, right? So my hat here says terpenes with terroir because Terpene Belt Farms is their hemp genetics come from the breeding programs that we drove, because we created hemp that is indistinguishable from cannabis. So we have OG hemp, we have cookies hemp, we have Skittles hemp,
I want
and
to
it's
try
a trip
the OG.
because like about the time when COVID hit, I shouldn't even say this, but anyway, about the time COVID hit, the trap guys were buying all the hemp from the hemp farmers who were using our genetics to sell it for regular prices.
Right.
And
Yep.
because it smelled like, damn, that's a good ass OG. And then smoke it like 1 time, 2 time, 3rd time, you're like, wait a minute.
Where is
Wait
it?
a minute, what's going on? But the first 2, boy, they hit you right. And you're like, oh. Which is really awesome, because I got this great video of Dr. Rafi Meshulam came to our laboratory in Washington, D.C., which we have a laboratory in D.C. that supports a greenhouse in D.C. that cultivates and stuff for their medical program. And one of the things he said, and I didn't really pick up on it at the time, but when I was going through the video footage, it was probably 1.5 years ago, he was like, I wonder if the smell, because I was teaching about the PhytoFacts and showing him some CBDV varieties that we had helped work on. And Biotech was the first company to offer CBDV. It won the Emerald Cup hemp competition, I think, in 2018. Shout out to Guava Jam. But he
Okay.
was like, I wonder if the smell creates a placebo of
Mm.
effect that the people get used to. And after he looked at the fighter print, I was like, oh, that's a good idea. And then when the trap dudes are buying the OG and selling it, like the first couple times they'd get high off of it, but then they wouldn't. I was like, that's exactly what Dr. Rafi Mashunlam was talking about. That dude is so far ahead of everyone. It's crazy.
That's
So
pretty
many like cross
cool.
connections. And I wrote a paper with Dr. Ethan Russo as well. That was 2018. It's called The Pharmacological Foundations of Cannabis Chemovars. And because we were able to breed plants with the same terpene profiles and different cannabinoid profiles, and vice versa, same cannabinoid profiles and different terpene profiles, we could run all these trials and see how the terpenes actually interacted with people and what the effects oftentimes were perceived. So the first thing we noticed was THC alone has a tendency to overwhelm the terpene entourage, especially up front. But as you add CBD or sometimes CBG, it kind of diminishes the impact of THC and it makes the terpenes more uh, prevalent. So, as you add more and more CBD, the more and more you feel the terpene. So like if you have CBD, you basically are smoking, you're getting a terpene high. You're not really getting a THC high, cannabis high, which is pretty interesting. Uh,
Yeah, I took notes on that. I was like, That's interesting."
yeah, and,
Um,
and yes, and the more research I do, the less I smoke super high THC. I
was gonna
I
ask. Yeah.
I almost, like I have all kinds of custom jars of this is basically hemp, but it's fire hemp. It's like 4% terps and beautiful. So that's what I use to cut all of my high THC weed with so that I don't get
Blended
the
with it.
panic or the anxiety. And if I still do, then I know that weed is just bunk. Like I don't want to mess with it. Like because it's either good weed or panic weed, and I don't like to get weird.
Yeah, I've been noticing it. It's funny because I just had another I want to say she's also a chemist on my previous episodes, and I was letting her know that I've smoked since I was 16 on a daily basis, pretty heavy, usually out of a bong. Um it used to be out of some, just some plugs, some homies. So obviously they weren't being tested. Now, in the past probably 2 years, I'm picking up from, dispensaries. I'm getting I'm gonna be 40 next year. I'm getting some weird, like, slightly panic attacks, I would say, when I'm driving, and that's never been the case for me. So I don't like some people are saying maybe it's because you're getting older. She had said maybe there's actually several women that were over 35 that she's like keeping track of these stories. I think she's probably going to do some sort of like research on it. But she's saying that it's pretty common for women 35 and above who have been smoking regularly for a really long time to be a lot more sensitive now to the THC that's being produced out there. I mean, I'm pretty sure you could probably speak on that, saying, speaking that you're, saying you're not going to be smoking weed that makes you racy or give you that panic attack feeling. Because usually I also take it right before I work out. So I don't feel it when I do that. But if I'm having just like a chill day and I'm driving back and forth, let's say from just running errands, sometimes if I get on the freeway, it comes in waves. It doesn't stay long, but I am noticing it more now as I'm getting older, and maybe also because I'm a mom and I'm more conscious of like having special cargo in the back. But is there things to look for when I'm shopping for it? Now that you're saying, they've always talked about full entourage effect is the best way to consume, having the two some sort of ratio, but I've always been a flower person. So for me to say that I'm going to start um, smoking hemp, I don't think that's gonna happen for me, especially I'm not gonna be getting good hemp down here.
First, let me clean that up. She was talking about driving on the interstate while playing GTA 4. Okay, she wasn't actually on the interstate. That's my
Yes.
paranoid lawyer. And
Yes.
then secondly, the reason that you probably don't smoke weed with CBD in it is because it's all been bunk in the past, and we're the only ones who have access to super fire, whatever ratio you want. But the problem is that got squashed because of the THC number inflation thing, right? Like, oh wait, it's got CBD in it, it's bunk. And that's not the case at all. I've given multiple presentations on this, and the beauty of the cannabinoid entourage with the terpenes, you can actually create and breed by design for effect. And no one does that because they're not incentivized to do it, because the market is so,
Mhm.
they're just not very, it's not a sophisticated market like the whiskeys and the beers and the things that have been around for hundreds of years. And I think that as we move forward and we have tools like the PhytoFacts to be able to kind of shake out, simplify it for everyone, like if you look at a PhytoFacts, they're the terpenes are color coded, and the
Yeah.
warm tones inherited with sativas, and the cool tones inherited with indicas. Traditionally, I flew David Watson, Sam the Skunk Man, to the United States for the first time since he fled back in the 80s or whatever. He smoked all over hash. He told us where it came from globally. If it was indica sativa. Similarly, Dr. Russo and Clark was involved in he's been to farms before. It's like, so we have all these OGs who travel, started this industry, who kind of contributed indirectly or directly to being able to, you look at something, it's like, oh, it's red and yellow. Whoa, that's sativa
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure. It's blue and purple. Oh, it's indica. And then you can see a cannabinoid ratio. And what's really great about that is people have a tendency to like flavors, and you can't open jars at the store, but with PhytoFacts, you can see the smell. So
Yeah.
terpenoline, as you know, has a very overwhelming smell. Like that's one almost everyone can get. Oh, that's train wreck, or that's Jack, or
Mhm.
whatnot. Similarly with osamine, the Pinter's Creek, that has a very strong kind of smell. And then the OGs are more limonene, cariomycin, so you have these different smell patterns, the blue dreams and the perps are pinene and myrcene. So when you look at the top 3 bars at the top of the PhytoFacts, if they're out of your favorite strain, you're like, oh, I like the red ones. Do you have any more red ones? Oh, I like the yellow ones. You have more yellow ones. So it helps you go down the line. But none of the growers have ever been incentivized to grow products that people love. They've been more incentivized to grow products with high THC numbers. Um, Hopefully, that's a thing of the past, and we're seeing that more on the genetic side. People are more interested in type 2s. That's what we call things that contain both THC and CBD.
Oh,
Um, we
yeah.
also call them enhanced flowers
Oh,
from
I
a
love
marketing
that.
perspective. Yeah,
I see it.
there's actually 11 really great commercials around enhanced flowers on YouTube that were made by a partner company. They kind of mimic the Apple versus PC, Mac versus PC commercials,
Okay.
identical, but it's like instead of that, it's, hey, I'm a high THCA flower, or sorry, I did the A thing. Hi, I'm a high THC flower. Hey, I'm an enhanced flower. I'm gonna go jogging. I'm gonna go to the party, and I'm gonna have a good time. And the dude's on the couch playing the video game. He's like, hey, how you gonna do all that? He's like, hey, I got balanced ratios of THC and CBD. I don't need to sit around all day and eat pizza. I'm gonna go do things. I can pick the path I want to go on. It's kind of choose your own adventure. But again, COVID hit about the same time all that happened, so it was pretty interesting how that kind of wound down. But it's important to be able to know what you're buying, and I think the PhytoFacts gives you a quick look, and you're like, oh, I remember that pattern of colors, which
Mhm.
because our brains can't handle
Yeah.
much more than a few bits of information,
These
especially.
stars. Few. Um, no, I completely agree to that because now that I am going to the dispensaries, it's important that I think even the bud tenders get opportunity to get educated on this. So I'm curious to know, how are the dispensaries, whether it's California or just across the state, responding to PhytoFacts or anything that you guys are doing? Are they open to it? Are they interested? Are they just seeing it as it not being beneficial, obviously because the cannabis industry is tight. Some owners may think it's not beneficial to bring to the business as far as either the retail shop or bringing it to the forefront of their bud tenders to be more educated on selling products that they're carrying.
I think what we've seen is that no one has ever been like, oh my gosh, that's dumb. They've all been like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. This is a great tool. How do we get it? How do we do it? And it's like, oh, we have to go to SC Labs, or wherever, and test your products there. And well, as you go backwards in the supply chain, money gets tighter and tighter and tighter. So nobody
Yeah.
wants to pay for terpenes. They just want to get that THC number to be high, or low if you're a THCA flower dealer, which is kind of ironic because one of the first slides I ever made in this industry is what happens when you add heat to THCA, because THCA is produced by the flower, right? You could eat a raw flower and not get high, throw it in the oven for an hour, eat it, and be stoned out of your mind. So it's really funny how we just keep going in circles as an industry. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, and that's why simple things like colors make it easy. And I honestly, one of the things you said before is women, you were mentioning you're having some anxiety.
Yeah.
What Jeremy Plum and his group up there found out was that type 2s, or cannabis that has both THC and CBD, were actually preferred by women over high THC flowers, which is an interesting little thing. Check him out. Shout out
Yeah.
Jeremy. But like I said, it gets you high. I have a nice little graphic. Like if you smoke THCA flower, let's see, I'll go the correct way. You'll get really high and come down, right? If you smoke a 1-to-1, it's more. So it's like creeper. You still get really high, and it lasts longer. And it gets flat. The curve flattens out as you go, but the THC kind of always, up and down. It's hard with the mirrored camera.
Yeah, no, I like to pay attention to the way it makes me feel. Is I think there's particular brands that are now telling the buyer what the information is on the strain, because like you said, the names are they're very creative with the names. But what I am seeing now is that they're putting like either not a chart, but almost like a gas line of the different colors. And it's like kind of just saying either floral, citrusy, dank, kind of giving the consumer an idea of the terpenes on there. Some of them are still just THC percentage and, just all the other labels that you have to see on it. But I love seeing that some brands are definitely hearing what the community and consumers want, whether they're new to consuming flower or someone like me who's been smoking flower for almost 2 decades. I personally want to know what terps I enjoy, especially because I'm big in weightlifting and I like to kind of pay attention to what it does to my body or like what it does to my mind. Hopefully what you guys put out, people are seeing it being more of a positive thing to bring to their businesses, to their brands, whether they're like cultivators or operators. I think it's important. Conferences, do you guys do that often to where you're speaking and doing these on a panel level to where you're able to present some of the charts that you were talking about? Because I think that's important too. And you're in front of, majority of the international cannabis industry comes out to those as well.
Yeah, we've done tons of that stuff. Like I said, I will be teaching people what we discovered 10 years ago for 10 more years, because the market doesn't move nearly as quickly. It's very similar to the computer, right? Like the computer was invented. It took forever before people figured
Mm.
out what to use it for. It took Apple to say, hey, this, you can use it for fun. You can draw, you can create music, and do all this stuff. And I view cannabis as software that we can plug in to ourselves. It's like biohacking. And like you're talking about working out, I have ultra marathon runners who beg me for pinene dominant 1-to-1s, because when they smoke that, they can run 50 miles like nobody's business. So it is a performance enhancing drug, and there's certain things that certain types of exercise and certain types of activities that you want to have a tailored fit for. And there's no breeders on the planet doing this except for biotech and the groups we work with. Most people, they're going for the smell, they're going for this, they're going for that, but they're not going. They're stuck in that THC paradigm. Like I've watched too many videos on THCA lately because I like it. Just it secretly infuriates me because I'm just like, what is
It's like,
going
let's talk about
on?
that. Let's talk about that. Um, uh, there's a lot
No,
of
we
back
need to
and
talk
forth.
about flat Earth so we can get some hits. All right, put hashtag flat Earth. Let's do a little.
We'll just
I
put that
think
as a
THCA
hashtag.
and flat Earth are the same thing, right?
Okay, perfect. Okay, got it. Very interesting. Yeah, I don't understand that because to me, I always saw THCA as, like you said, the raw flower, throw it in my smoothie. There was like tons of education on it. It was, yeah, I mean, then you learn how to make your brownies. I mean, it was like so back in the day. I don't know how we're back to this, and I may be looking at it wrong, but that's what the argument is. Correct. Okay. Okay.
It's all about
Yeah.
that farm bill,
That's
baby. 0.3% THC is hemp. So yeah, it's just ways to sell weed outside of legal jurisdictions. That's what it
yeah,
is.
the
And
hot CBD.
I'm all for the activism side. That's good for business. What was really interesting though was during the COVID time. I like to bring this up because I'm a my PhD was basically molecular biology. Super don't want to get into that stuff so much more than I never wore a mask. Just to put it in perspective for you.
Same,
Hope that doesn't
same.
offend you.
No,
Uh,
I'm sad
but
that you still see people wearing it now. It's like so okay,
It's the
so sad.
Nazi. It's the MAGA hat for the opposite, right? It's like the opposite. It's one over the MAGA hat. But it was really crazy because they were buying all these packs of hemp and they're spraying it with THC. You heard this,
Mm,
right?
yes, yes.
That's a type 2 flower. That's a 1-to-1. So all these people are having this great experience with this 1-to-1 they're buying from the smoke shop.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so it's very interesting because I think that
CBD
what
shops.
and not to I didn't mean to come on here and start screaming about CBD because that's so like 1982 or something. I'm joking, but it's like I have people that we develop software, we develop the track and trace system that actually manages your supply chain solely by chemistry. Because in my mind, I thought one day you would have a central distribution center like agriculture. You'd have 100 farms, and they'd be sending these batches. So they'd do a COA on them real quick, and then as the people are trimming or whatever, the trim would go into bags that would be limonene dominant type 1, limonene dominant hemp, terpene. So the extract situation would be consistent extracts, so you can then formulate on the back end. I was thinking of it like a chemical engineer would, like an oil refinery.
That's very interesting. I learn so much talking to people like you who actually take the time to really do the science part of it. I mean, obviously, I appreciate the cultivators, the retailers, the brands, everybody out there, but to be able to like go this deep helps me also as a consumer, like know what to look for and not to be afraid of, and just to understand like what's the riffraff with this THCA. It's just sad. It's just really sad to see that it's kind of going backwards, like you said. To that point, I do normally ask this question as well. What was your thoughts on everything that went through with the the reclassification for cannabis?
Just like when the people on TV say we have a protect our democracy, we do not have a democracy. We have a constitutional republic that is supported by democratic elections. Similarly, right? They just said we suggest you reclassify it. That hasn't been reclassified. That was just a memo that said, "Hey,
The
you should
dangle.
reclassify it. Hey, it's a
Yeah.
democracy. Hey, it's whatever we say." And all these people who stare at the screen like Plato's cave are going to believe us. Just a manipulation, Hey, it's a democracy. No, it's not a democracy. Hey, it's going to be reclassified. No, it's not going to be. Reclassifying cannabis is an international thing. It's an international treaty that classifies drugs. So we can't, go
Decide.
for this. We can't go it alone. We have to like get the entire global community to say, okay, let's reclassify cannabis and then modify an international agreement. Like it's
Yes.
funny because you get all this hype, but
Yeah,
there's
I think it was a move to get some votes to lean towards a certain side for me. That's my
yeah,
observation.
just optimism,
Think
and
like
I have people in the thick of that too. So it's interesting because I don't see it going anywhere fast. It's like you said,
yeah,
it's a tool to manipulate and herd.
for me as
Along those lines, though, it would be one of the good things about it if it were potentially rescheduled to 3 is that the way it was explained to me by someone on the ground is that veterans would then have access to cannabis free of, like, essentially compensated free of charge or whatever as part of the benefits package. And it was also packaged to me that
You're right.
they wanted to do this to help in recruitment for the military. But you saw today or whatever, they stopped mandatory drug testing recruits for marijuana. So
Hmm.
they took that into their own hands, because that was I guess there's a lot of failures for marijuana, and no one's hitting the recruitment numbers for any of the armed forces, so they had to figure out ways to get people in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's nobody's trying to go in anytime soon there. All right. Well, that was really a lot to unpack. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I really enjoyed hearing your background as far as like kind of what you got or how you got there and your mentor and you being more of a scientist. What did your parents think as far as you going into, I mean, I guess they were always okay with it. I mean, they probably already knew if you were a scientist that you were open. No, no, okay. Not into experiments. Okay.
My mother passed away when I was very young.
I'm sorry.
Actually, that's one of the stories I left out. I said a tragic set of events. But when
Okay.
my dad had a girlfriend who smoked weed, and I would trade her roaches to an older kid for turtle eggs and random lizards and stuff like that. So I was really into it. But and then I said that I went back to a different school to get in the good graces of my father. He came home one day and I was laying on my bed, passed out at like he worked nights, and I had like 50 grand cash next to me.
Oh, fuck.
And he was like, "Get out, I know what you're doing." So he was really against it the entire time. Like when I moved out to California, I didn't tell him what I was doing. He didn't even know. I lived next door to him and was growing indoor at my house. He had no idea.
Oh,
Just
man.
to put it in perspective. Ask any of my homies, and all of them came out to California to chase this dream with me. But
Nice.
it's so funny because there's so many people have the same situation. You know what changed his mind? Fucking Sanjay Gupta.
Oh, wow. Of course.
Charlotte's Web. Dude calls me. He's like, "Did you see
He
that
would.
show on CNN with Sanjay?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Weed's cool now, man. It's okay. It's medical, bro."
All
I'm like,
right. No
"It took
shit.
Sanjay to convince you, Dad. What the?" So, but then after
Oh,
that, it
well,
was like,
this
"Ah,
is
you're
no
cool,
now.
man. It's cool. Your brother, he's a drug addict stoner, but you're cool because you're a research medical guy." This is so funny. That was a good one.
Oh, that's awesome. At least he's came around the corner and,
Thank you, Sanjay Gupta.
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, there you go. Well, yeah, you have an incredible story. I think what you're doing is an amazing asset to our community. I think a lot of people who, like I said, own brands or even um, have something to put out there that's related to flower needs to do this for their own end game. I think also too, like marketing strategy, like understanding your audience and your consumer base as far as what they're buying on a regular basis probably would help your buyer and then your own like bottom end as far as your cash line. So I see this playing out in so many different ways. I personally love it. I know when I was probably last year or 2 years ago when I was first time a pre-roll judge and you guys did a short presentation on just terpenes and just understanding that that was the first time ever seeing something like that. So definitely send me the links so that we could put those charts that you were talking about earlier in the description. But I do appreciate you sharing all of that information. Before we let you go, I would like to do a little 7 grams, which is a rapid fire round, just consuming cannabis. And then we'll take your plugs and then we'll let you go for the end of the day.
Okay.
So, let me get my 7 grams up. It's just basically fun questions about how you like to smoke weed, which you kind of answered that a little bit, but
I don't smoke weed.
you don't smoke
I
weed.
just play a weed smoker on a TV show.
Perfect. We could go into character then in that case. All right, guys, we're going to go into 7 grams with Mark Lewis, founder of Napro research and inventor of PhytoFacts. Number one, grinders or fingers?
You cut out. I'm sorry.
Grinders or fingers?
Oh, scissors.
You would.
Scissors and fingers. You can see how
Scissors
resin
are
they
real.
are.
I was gonna say you look like you need alcohol.
No, you get that
No.
like resin ball every time.
Okay, perfect. That's gonna answer the next couple questions, but number two, a dispo or a plug?
I don't know what that is. I'm
A
sorry.
disp
I'm old.
dispensary or a plug?
Oh, neither.
You are your own.
I only smoke Molecular Farms cannabis
Yay. Okay, there you go.
and Emerald Cup samples because I too am Emerald Cup judge, but flower and
Woo! Oh my
pre-roll. So shout out to Emerald Cup.
gosh. Yes, we love Emerald Cup. Don't forget to buy your tickets August 17th and 18th.
We'll be there.
Shout out to all you flower judges because you guys had hella entries this year. We had 61. You guys had what? Three something.
300 north of 300. Yeah,
Yeah, I was like, oh
it was
my, bless your hearts, because like I said, it's not just smoking it, analyzing and assessing it and actually doing our scorecards and putting comments in for notes. That's work. And so we appreciate all the time and we love our judges.
it definitely. Last year when I did it, I was recovering from a total knee replacement, so it was easy. I was like, I had eight weeks, no job, just
Perfect.
this time it was like, whoa,
Yeah, you have to
it's
like
a
really
full-time job.
strategize. Yeah, for sure. But you guys did it and I'm glad.
Yeah.
Were you at the mixer?
I was not at the mixer. I was
Ah,
not. Yeah. My travel is super intensified this month. I have to go to DC a lot
mm.
and also Canada. So,
Oh,
and as the summer starts, it gets busy and then it lays off in July. And when harvest season comes, I travel all around for harvest season as well.
very cool. All right. I hate to even ask you this question out of everybody, but are you more of a floral person or a gasoline person?
Oh, I'm definitely gas.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
Um,
gas to the max. In fact, shout out to Lemon Crush 2017 Emerald Cup overall winner, the gassiest gas there ever was.
Good to know. I'll have to look for that. Um, bong tokes or joints?
Wow. I really miss bong tokes. I had a best friend who drove a S10 and he had a
Oh
toolbox in
my
the
god,
back of it that had bongs in it. And we were bong masters back then. A little ice, a little water.
I feel like we're from the same era. S10s, yes, for sure. Bongs and S10s all day.
Yeah, bongs with S10s. We found this really cool flying saucer bong that was really heavy at the bottom, and you could like hit it, and it would just go. Woo, woo, woo. It
Oh
wouldn't tip
man,
over. You know what I mean? It was awesome.
yeah, yeah. I'm still a glass person. I've got like over
But
a
I don't
dozen.
have a bong because it's hard to conceal that from the children. It's like a dirty thing that like I smoke a lot of joints
Okay, okay.
and spliffs with tobacco. But
Oh,
back in
nice.
the day, it was all bong
Okay. Papers or leaves?
papers,
Right, live resin or rosin? Preference.
rosin.
Oh, that's interesting. I was thinking it's interesting coming from somebody that's, a chemist. So,
I like more of everything that was there originally. As you keep distilling it down, it changes the effect to me.
okay. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I
Live
personally
resin's great.
rosin.
Don't get me wrong, but I kind of like. I don't know why. I like the wax and fatty acid flavors. I don't know. It makes
Yeah,
it feel more complete, I guess. Like that's why I gravitate towards flower because it's like
right.
complete. Like the entourage is complete. It's not just this note or that note. It's like it's orchestra.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I feel the same way. And last question, Cheech and Chung or half baked?
Man, I grew up on Cheek and Chong, so I had
Noel.
to go with that. But Half Baked wasn't bad. That moment when he's like, "I'm gonna make a run for it, B," that was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, like everyone
Hilarious.
says, they're like part of the culture and they're still part of it now. And I don't even know how old they are. And so it's like you got to go with that one. But I can't dog half bake. Half bake is still part of,
It was a good one. It was a good one for
yeah,
sure.
part of my
Oh,
time.
you got me going back. I'm like thinking about live rosin. I like actually I prefer all heads. Like neither of those. I'm like David Watson, and shout out to Marcus Richardson, Bubble Man. Um, they turned me on to all heads. That's a whole different ball game, and it's
Can you explain
that's
that?
what I
I
prefer.
don't think I understand that. Or what is that? All heads, like
Oh,
fresh.
all so if you do dry sift hash, and then you do
Okay.
like electrostatic, like you take, this is an oversimplification, but you take, when you take a balloon and you rub it and it pulls your hair out, you can take
Yes.
it, run it over the hash, and it'll pull up all the stalks. So all you have left are the balls that are the trichome heads. That's the best hash rosin, whatever, in the whole world, like hands down.
And who does that? Who produces that as far as a brand that you know of?
Nobody. That's
Oh,
too. That we
I
call
was like,
that
so where
100.
can I find that?
I can find you some. We call that 100-meter hash because it doesn't make it 100 meters past where it was made.
Copy. Very interesting. Yeah. I'm surprised you don't have a line of your own. I bet you would, probably make some good hits
Uh,
out there.
yeah, we have plenty of different things. I'm not really in the CPG thing, right?
Yeah.
I, I'm more. I want to be like you. I want to have a podcast, educate
This is
people.
great.
Right?
Yeah, that's what I tell people. I love the industry. My heart goes out to everybody that has to deal with all the regulatory, the taxes, the licensing. But I love being a podcaster in the space. I'm able to bring on people like you, share your story on my platform. So in case people don't get the chance to know like who you are, come across your story, they come across my platform and they're able to get this information. So again, we've almost been up. We are at the hour now. Before I let you go, if you don't mind just letting everybody know where to find you and any plugs that you have to support PhytoFacts or Napro research.
I'm not big on self promotion. I have a LinkedIn page. If you Google Mark Lewis cannabis, you'll find me. I don't plug Instagram or any of those brainwashing tools because sadly they're corrupting our youth. I have two young children and I see it every day, and they're not allowed to have those devices anymore. And
How old
I
are
hate
they?
to be, in double digits now, both of them.
Oh, okay. I haven't gotten there, so I don't have to challenge that. But yeah, I have girlfriends that are like, my daughter doesn't understand why she can't even have a phone. So I feel you.
My
I feel you.
daughters are the only two in their class that don't have phones.
Oh, she doesn't.
And my
Yeah.
partner's like, "You're ruining their social life." I'm like,
Right.
"Or am I enriching it?"
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it kills me now that I'm a mom. I definitely feel like a mom because I take a look around and even seeing like my nephews and nieces, if their phone dies, they have to be like right next to the plug to be they have to be on their phone plugged in, so they have to sit next to the extension port or the electric port. And so um yeah, definitely 80s 90s kid definitely wasn't doing that. We
If
got
I
to
was
page.
to plug anything on this show, though, I would plug everyone take time to read Plato's The Republic. In there, it shows you the progression of essentially government infrastructure. He starts off as a monarchy that's a tyranny, and they're overthrown, and create a constitutional republic, which devolves into a democracy, which then you have demagogues arise, which one of those demagogues wins, it becomes a tyranny, and the system repeats itself. Keep in mind this was written 2,000 plus years ago. It also depicts something called the allegory of the cave, where there are prisoners who are forced, chained to face a cave wall. Behind the prisoners are puppeteers. Behind the puppeteers is a great fire. And all the prisoners are allowed to see and perceive reality through are echoes and shadows on the cave wall. They wrote about television 2,000 plus years ago being a tool of enslavement, and our phones and our computers are just an extension of that. So history repeats itself, or at least it rhymes. That's the number one principle you always remember. Number two is GIGO. Garbage in equals garbage out. Doesn't matter if it's a plant, you put garbage in the roots, garbage is going to come out. If it's your brain, put garbage in, garbage out. Those are like typical, that's like chemistry 101, garbage in, garbage out, So
I love that. Yeah, so
that's
I
right.
imagine your diet's probably on point, I'm pretty sure, nutrition. Uh,
I had In-N-Out today. What are you talking about?
Hey, that's not too dirty. That's not too dirty.
It's
But
the
you went on
cleanest.
a cycle. We talked about that offline, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm big on that as well. My kids are
All
mainly
organic
outside.
for the kids.
Try to, what we get out here isn't very organic. So I always say, unless you're growing it yourself, it makes it a little bit difficult. But I have
Well,
become the type to definitely, I'm looking at my ingredients now, and I've learned, the less ingredients is probably the better and the best way to go, as far as really saying, is this really organic? And then just getting organic, like fruits, and just making them eat those things. And I'm more a red meat eater here, so we're not afraid of meat. We try to get them to eat as much protein. I always joke about, like, I live in the suburbs, but I really do need some chickens as much as we go through eggs. So I am truly a big believer in, like, what we consume, as far as TV, music, what we are putting into our brains and our bodies makes a huge, huge difference as far as who we are. It makes an impact, I should say.
and dietarily, you mentioned fruits and vegetables, but the number one thing you have to 100% always get organic is any breads, pastas, cereals,
We don't.
because it may say non-GMO, but they still spray it with
Yep.
Roundup at the end of the year to kill it, and it's still in the. And so it's those things. That's why I feel guilty about In-N-Out, because they don't have it organic buns, so I'm eating a Roundup bun. So
Yeah, as long as it's not every day, you
no, I was.
exactly.
It was one of those times. I was driving by. It was like 10:15. I was like, "What? There's nobody in line."
Oh, yeah, that's rare.
Haven't
Yeah,
had
that one.
breakfast. Just left the gym. It was
Oh, just
perfect.
make pre-workout. Yeah, exactly.
Post workout. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, I appreciate that, and, great information again. I love the end of this. If there's anything that you guys want to find on Mark, it's gonna be in our description. Please make sure you jump in the comments if there's anything that you guys resonated with. Other than that, don't forget to hit that subscribe. Peace.
All right. Thanks.